Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Backyard Banter Podcast. My name is Matt Harmon. If you've been listening to this show, you know what we're doing here is we're going through and talking to some of the best people from the sports writing industry, and we do have one of the best today. And I'm happy to say that I'm joined today by Jessica Kleinschmidt from FanDuel. Jessica, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. So your podcast isn't legal yet. You're only on number 19.
Yeah, I guess that's
okay.
true.
Can't drink yet.
Right. But we can buy cigarettes and play the lottery.
And vote in that order.
Boring.
In that order, though. Make sure you get cigarettes, play the lottery, and then go vote, kids.
Preferably. This podcast is explicit on iTunes, so it makes sense we're giving out this advice. No, it's actually funny to pull back the curtain a little bit. I've actually recorded the 20th episode already because I will be going on a cross-country road trip here starting tomorrow. So I already have that one in the docket. So technically the podcast is 20 episodes old by the time you're listening to this. So there's little... there's some technical stuff right there. If you're watching the YouTube broadcast version, you know that I just completely embarrassed myself with a move there. So we're already starting off hot, and to keep this theme going. If you've been listening to the last two episodes, we've been giving away a spot in the Scott Fish Bowl for a lucky iTunes reviewer or Stitcher reviewer, and I have picked the person. And the winner of the contest to get into the Scott Fish Bowl is a user on iTunes by the name Aquitas. Or Aquitas. I don't know. It's spelled Aequiuitas. Anyways, the review they left was really nice. It goes such a great concept for a podcast. Harmon gets a variety of guests to sit down and tell the stories of how they were introduced to the fantasy sports writing industry or the sports media industry with the focus on fantasy football writers. Those interested in the industry will eat this stuff up, but the truth is that the advice in these podcasts is inspiring to just about anybody with aspirations. Hell, I'm a musician, and I find these stories encouraging and thought-provoking because at the end of the day, this podcast isn't about sports. It's about finding your passion and pursuing it. Beautiful stuff. So great review there, Aquitas or Aquitas, however you pronounce your iTunes name. Email me at mharmon2570@gmail.com, and I'll get you hooked up with Scott Fish for your entry into the league. Really appreciate everybody that left a review to get entered into the contest. I'll maybe try to give something else away, but for now, keep leaving reviews, and I'll pretty much just keep tweeting out good pictures of my dog or great thoughts that I have in my head, because I know that's what you all are here for. But today, we're not here for me. We're here for Jess. So, Jess, I always start the podcast by asking the guest, how did you come to fall in love with football or sports or anything in general? I know that you actually focus right now on some other terrible sport that people play. So go right ahead. Tell us how you got into all of that, like as a fan.
Well, you calling it an awful sport is really ruining the adorable story that I have.
Well, that's what I do. I ruin things.
I know, you're just awful person, Matt Harmon. So when I was little, I was pretty much raised on a baseball field and also on a football field. So I'll put that out for you too. We were just a sports family, and specifically baseball. My dad was like the president of the league. My mom did all the secretarial work and all that fun stuff. And we had like our Sunday family dinners and snack bar, which is something that we always did. So since I was little, I was always something I've always been interested in. I never really thought, being a female in sports was even a thing. When I was younger, it was just like, I'm a chick, I like sports, and I like to write. Cool. So I just kept doing it, but I actually, it was weird. It was something I always wanted to do, but I ended up getting a job right in high school for the government. So I kind of put that on the back burner, and great job for the government, obviously great benefits and stuff like that. And so it was one day where one of my Twitter followers, back when I had maybe like 300 followers. And he discovered me and he said, "Hey, I really like your blog." I was putting out this blog called Stealing Bases and Stilettos. And I wrote about the A's, naturally. I think they won something. I think they won the AL West or something crazy a couple years ago. And I wrote about it. Matt's like, "Meh, meh." You're not Jessica.
I've known like 3 of the words that you've said so far.
Yeah, exactly. So Vincent Frank came out and he said, "Hey, I really like your blog." And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've always wanted to be a sports writer." And he said, "Well, I have a website. You should start writing for me." And so it was eDraft Sports. And my first article was on fantasy football. And at the time I had played every year, but I never really got into it. I was like, as long as I beat my dad, as long as I beat my brother, like, I'm cool. So I ended up, kicking their asses and everything redundantly, if I must brag. Most of the time it was on like auto draft, but still you get to brag. And finally, I was my first article, I think it was at the top 10 running backs you should start this week or something crazy like that. This one article that would take me now about 6 minutes to write took me about 6 days to write. I was so nervous. I was so scared. I had no idea what he was looking for. And then after that, I started just pounding out these articles and my following kind of just happened. And the next thing you know, I got to kind of do all kinds of stuff. So I was lucky enough to say goodbye to my government job. Not really lucky. I struggled at the beginning because I was like, oh, it's such an easy industry to get into, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It takes a lot of hard work. And so I kind of quit my job with the government, and which was a lot of people said I was stupid for doing, but I did it. And I moved to the Bay Area to try to pursue this thing. And Bay Area didn't really work out. But as I moved, the moment I decided to move back to Reno, Nevada, where I am now, FanDuel discovered me. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And I feel like I haven't worked a day in my life ever since I landed that job. So it's been #very much blessed.
Beautiful. Well, you covered the whole thing. That's the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, right. This is great. It's the shortest episode in show history. No, I'm just kidding. Nothing good lasts this long. It has to go longer. Anyways, so coming back kind of to the point where you left your, quote unquote day job, what's the, like you mentioned, some people think that's crazy. I never really had that experience. Some people have that we've talked to on the podcast so far. What's kind of the thought process that goes behind that when you take that risk?
I've just never been intimidated by anything in this industry. And I remember one of my best friends that I worked with, I looked over at her and I said, I can't do this anymore. And it was one of those things where everybody that I worked with said, you're better than this particular job. And it wasn't until I believed it where I kind of stood up. And I remember the time crunch was 9 o'clock in the morning. I decided to quit. By the time I got back from lunchtime around 12:30, I had put my 2 weeks in. So it was like very quick. And that's what I do. Like every tattoo I've gotten, every piercing I've gotten, I just do it on a whim. So it's the type of person that I am. So I did that. And even my best friend who I was with that I worked with said, you're going to be fine. And I'm a very impatient person. So I realized quickly that was not, I wouldn't say it was the stupidest thing to do, but it was something that was definitely a culture shock quickly. So I did just keep working hard, but it was kind of like a snap in my head where I was at this job for almost a decade. I was plateauing at that job and I couldn't stand it. And it was weird. Like in the city I was raised in, girls kind of just want to get married and have babies really quickly. I've never really had that mental process. So I would rather, exactly. So I was kind of like, okay, cool. Like I'm single. I can do what I want to do. I can up and move, not have to answer to anybody. So I thought I would take advantage of that before some poor soul wanted to wife me up. No, either way, either way, I would, it was a different situation, but I decided, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this right. And even though things didn't work out in the Bay Area, everything kind of all fell together. So it was one of those situations. Now, when I do go back to the Bay Area, I have places to stay, people to network with, people to stay with. So, but at the end of the day, it was more or less, it was kind of on a whim. But at the end of the day, it's something I've always wanted to do. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the full way. So that's what I did. Oops, sorry. I got really intense there, just beating stuff up. My bad.
Oh, that's all good. So kind of hearkening back to the impetus to leave the job, because like you said, things kind of started fast. Like somebody saw you tweeting or writing an article and all that, and then you kind of get your first like kind of part-time gig. But it's definitely a big step to go from getting that first like oh, hey, here's my little foot in the door at a site. And then like, oh, wait, I need to make money. There's a big gap between the two. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't think, because I was very spoiled when I was blogging and writing. I had a government job, so I was getting paid very well. I didn't have to worry about it. And then I remember it wasn't until I got my first paying gig with Sportsnaut where it was like $200 a month will pay you, and I was like, what? That's crazy! Like, especially in this industry, that's just like the craziest amount of money you could really ask for. And so that was just on top of my government job. And I think it wasn't until maybe halfway through Sportsnaut where I realized, okay, well, I'm doing okay. I'm getting really good amount of views for Sportsnaut. And even though I don't know where I go with this, I need to eat. I need to actually, do something. But it's difficult because I loved it, but I was getting worried that if I went full force with making it a career, that I wouldn't enjoy it anymore. Because there comes a time where you're writing and you enjoy it, and I was scared that like I wouldn't get the hard eye emojis if I was watching a baseball game anymore, because I just spent 10 hours writing about it that day, and that really made me nervous. And there were times where I really just wanted to go back to my government job because the pay was so good, but then I didn't want to be that person to say I didn't really give it a full try. And so Will Carroll kind of swooped in and rescued me, and he was really a big fan of my work. I interviewed him for a lot of articles, and I realized, oh, okay, well, now I can continue this. But now it's kind of bad because now that I do have such a great job with FanDuel, I realized I can't go back to my government job because I'm doing this. And I realized you can get paid to do what you love, whether it is sports writing or what have you. But I'm realizing I have to continue it. And now that I have my first great paying job, like I realize the sky is the limit. You just have to make sure you have the right mentality. And I think you have to be kind of a freak of nature to do what we do. So it's kind of it's so true. It's so true. We're just weird. We're weird people. So it's kind of one of those things. So I think it was probably about 6 to 7 months with writing for Sportsnaut where I was thinking like, okay, let me figure this out. And Will, I didn't really reach out to Will, but Will said, we really want your perspective at FanDuel Insider. And it was this new website that they were launching, and it's been kind of awesome since.
I'm going to pause you there before we go more into the FanDuel thing,
Okay.
and kind of bring you back a little bit there to when you were kind of talking about the idea of like, do you think you're going to lose loving the game or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And I know the answer to this because, I follow you on Twitter. We're tight in real life. So I know your thoughts about baseball, unfortunately, but like,
right.
What
watch your mouth. Watch your mouth.
No, this is my podcast.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay.
I'm gonna play the host. I'm gonna play the host card. This is my podcast. If I want to shit on baseball, I'm gonna shit on baseball.
Oh my gosh, you're so mean.
I know. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna try to be nice about it. But anyways, so I do my best. Do my best to be nice. It's a struggle. But anyways, so talking about not losing that passion. Obviously, you have not lost that passion. You're still pretty psyched on baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
What keeps that passion alive, even though it can definitely, and I can speak the same thing about football, like it can be grueling 365 days a year covering a sport?
I don't know. I think it's because, I played softball, like I played back in the day, and I've met so many awesome people. I've experienced the behind the scenes stuff. I don't know. I think it's just something I've always just been obsessed with. And I don't know. I think I've learned so much more about the game. I've met so many of the players and their wives and their girlfriends, and I see what really goes into it. And it's not, if we're going more towards the wives and the girlfriend thing, I can promise you all the mentality and all the stories that you have in your head are more than likely going to be false. It's really difficult to be with an athlete, and these women, I don't know how they do it. And just when they've opened up to me through my WAG series, it's cool to see that. And even when I'm in the press box covering a game, it's just different too, because you can hear like all the fun stats they're talking about. And when you're live tweeting it, it's just like, I just get off like on these weird tangents when like I know when like a trade's been done before anybody else does. And you write an article, and then Bryce Harper hits 100th bomb, and you're like, oh, I just wrote about him today because he hit his 99th career the other day. And it's just, I don't know, there's just something cool about it. But then I also know Like my family loves it. They're obsessed with baseball too. So when I get to go home and talk to them about like, hey, look what I just did, and they get into it too. I just think it's like it brings you back to like being a little kid again. So and that's something you just cannot erase from who you are. So.
Yeah, I think if I can put it into like kind of summarize what you just said and put it into a phrase that I think I feel it's like being a part of the story, you know, and not the story, because nothing pisses me off more than writers that want to make themselves the story. That's one of the top 5 most obnoxious things you can do as a sports writer.
Give me an example of that. Is that like, oh, so he had like, how does that? I don't think I've ever seen that.
Like I would say an analyst that antagonizes a player to the point of like they're trying to, I would say it's hard to think of I can't think of a specific example, especially without being rude to anybody, but because that's not my thing.
Are these like former players that turn analysts?
No. That's a whole nother thing. I'm talking about just like your regular rink-a-dink writers, like me.
Rink-a-dink writer.
Yeah, your normal rink-a-dink writers like Matt Harmon.
Good word, Matt Harmon. Good for you.
I'm good at some things.
It's not like an intelligent word, but it's a good word.
Yeah, it's something. But so I think like writers that, you know, antagonize players to bring attention onto themselves, that's a part of it. Writers that somehow want to claim some piece of success off or claim some sort of credit off a player's success, I think is obnoxious. Like we talked about this with Cecil Lammey on his show, like his relationship with CJ Anderson, like they're very tight, but at no point does Cecil like somehow be like, you know, that's my buddy CJ, like scoring a touchdown. Like that's, you know, I helped, like he told the story about how, you know, he sent CJ a text, like with his like with wearing his jersey and be like, I still believe in you, man. And like, after, you know, then later on in the season, he ended up rebounding or whatever. And Cecil says that not to be like, look what I did for CJ Anderson, but like to just show like, you know, I was just encouraging my friend. Like that's being a part of the story, but it's not making yourself the story, I guess.
Absolutely. I
get that. So it's kind of hard to say, but it's something that like, you know, when you see it, like a writer trying to make it about them. Cause that's the thing, like, or just in general, I think being like, look at me, I predicted this player's breakout. Like, that's so cool. It's like,
guilty. Guilty.
Well, we've all definitely tried to thump our chest, but like at the end of the day, for me, like it's about the players. You know, this is their story, and we're just kind of like these little parts of it. But it's cool. But like you're saying, it's cool to be a part of it. It's cool to be a part of, in some way, like play some sort. If they were to write a book about this shit, you know, there'd be some part for us. I think that's kind of the cool, like some little tiny extra that walks through the screen. Like that's cool.
Especially if like you get to interview a guy and he's willing to open up, or even obviously a girl too, if they're willing to open up to you and tell you their story, like you're like, that's freaking awesome. Like, thanks for, oops, good Lord, I am so sorry. I keep doing it. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, I'll edit all this out.
This is so bad. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that's cool. Sorry. Okay.
Anyways, I'm not taking this out of the video part. I'm editing it out of the audio part.
Fine.
But anyways, kind of continuing back to you a little bit here, Jess. You mentioned FanDuel, and were you one of the original people that was hired when they started the insiders thing?
I was one. Tyler Brook and he's formerly of Bleacher Report as well. He actually is, I guess, my counterpart, or he was at work. And it was like our first big paying gig, and Will kind of, and FanDuel Insider kind of hired us to basically do we call it content bombing, which is a lot of clickable material, fun stuff. And then we've since kind of gone in and out of the format of what we wanted to do. So it was me along with about 20 other writers that got hired on to start FanDuel Insider. So if you want to compare it to something, we kind of wanted to be like the big league, or, you know, For the Win from USA Today, kind of like that through FanDuel. So that's what we decided to do.
Right on. All the stuff I can never do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, right. Keep it under 500 words. Fat chance.
Yeah.
So you basically just Will approached you to get the job. Is that how it happened, or did you apply for something, or?
I didn't apply for anything. I interviewed, I had Will on maybe one of my podcasts, and it was actually one of the best podcasts I ever had because we were talking about, I believe somebody got busted for pot. I want to say it was Norman, maybe. I don't know. He got busted. I think it was MLB. Somebody in the MLB got busted for pot. And yeah, you're like, okay. And so cool, Jess. And so we were talking about that, and like we had like really good chemistry going back and forth. And then FanDuel Insider decided to pick him up and start this project. And then Will reached out to me and said, we need some writers. And he's like, I really want you on board. And then he called me, set it up, and the next thing you know, I was published on FanDuel Insider. And there was obviously a really hard, intense launch of FanDuel Insider. We kind of came out of nowhere. And after the billionth tweet and text to me saying, if I see one more effing FanDuel commercial, I'm going to shoot myself. It got, it was a very quick few months. There was a lot going on. So that's basically how it started. But I met some of the most amazing people ever, and I have great friendships with all of them. So it ended up being a really cool scenario.
That's awesome. So that's essentially, that's your full-time thing now. That's what you do with your life.
That's it. I do that. I'm freelancing for like various other outlets. If MLB.com needs for me to go get some quotes around here, I'll go do it, because there's a AAA team here that for the Diamondbacks that I've been doing some stuff with, the Reno Aces. I'm also just started a radio show with a partner of CBS Sports in Kansas City. That's called Sweet Action, which launches May 14th. Yes.
See, I knew that, but I didn't know
I have
whether
to
I
actually
could
give
say that
credit
on
to
the
Michael
podcast.
Shaw. Right. So
I didn't know whether it was. I didn't know whether it was a fish or not.
That's okay. But no, actually, I have to give credit to Michael Shoddy. Michael Shoddy gave me the idea for the name, and we pushed it out that way. So yeah. And so that starts, and we'll be doing a lot of Kansas City Royals stuff, Kansas City Chiefs stuff, a lot of local stuff, but then also everything in the world stuff. So that's also what I'm doing. And then I'm freelancing for a lot of places. I just don't remember what all the names of them are.
Right. So you'll be covering the Chiefs when Albert Wilson finally becomes the Hall of Famer that he's destined to be.
I just want to do everything you want me to do, Matt Harmon.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. But so tell Albert Wilson that I'm his best friend. I'm his best friend and his biggest fan.
Okay, well, I thought we weren't allowed to do that. So now you want me to do that? Are you going to be the writer who says, "Well, he's my best friend"? When he doesn't?
I'm not going to say it. I just this is a very big truther thing. I like the guy and I think he's actually really good, but nobody will probably ever know it because the Chiefs throw the ball 500 times a year. But anyways, that's a tangent. Albert Wilson.
How do you think the Royals are going to do this year, Matt Harmon?
What's a Royal?
The Kansas City Royals. Do you think they're going to take the AL Central?
I don't know what. Are you speaking a foreign language right now?
A little bit.
This is a beautiful, awkward interaction that I'm definitely not editing out at all. Anyways, Jess, you mentioned like kind of the I don't want to say controversy, but some of the awkward tension with writing for a DFS site that came this year with all the advertisements, some of the other things. As much as you can, or feel comfortable sharing about that, kind of talk about that a little bit. How it was a little bit of a tenuous time there at different points this season.
It was more or less, I think the only stressful part that I dealt with was people coming at me and people forgetting that these guys are humans was what it was. And I had to kind of turn that off when I was doing my breakups, when I had the DFS breakups. For those of you who don't know what those are, it's just basically telling me like, you shouldn't start this guy that week. So I think the most difficult point of the DFS situation where, I mean, it was hard for me because I'd kind of like intensely go into it. I only played DFS a little bit before I got started. And then there was the drama with DraftKings, and then we had to stop playing. So, which kind of sucked because I liked the practice of it. But ultimately the fantasy aspect kind of, I don't know, it got a little weird because, like I said, you have to kind of turn off the fact that these guys are humans. And a lot of them mention that too. They say, okay, you can't get mad at me because your fantasy situation didn't happen. And people will actually tweet these guys saying, my
Yeah,
fantasy team sucked and it's because of you. And that like always broke my heart. And
it's the worst.
it was just the absolute worst. And that's why, I started some of my certain art. That's why I'm glad we kind of got to step back from strictly fantasy stuff and do more of like, my WAG series, or, trying to figure out these people are human. So that's
What is the
probably where
WAG
it got the
series for
most
those of
awkward
us
for
that
me.
don't know?
What's that?
I said, what is the WAG series for the listeners that don't know?
Oh, well, WAG stands for Wives and Girlfriends of Athletes, basically. So I've been interviewing more baseball women than anything, just because that's just the access that I have. But I think I only did like maybe 2 football women so far. So if you guys know anybody, hook a sister up, because I'm relaunching that again. So that will continue. So I started doing that on top of everything else. So kind of put more of a human perspective on, rather than just, okay, well, he's a number. Yeah, but that number goes home to wife and kids, so people need to remember that. So that's kind of why I was really glad they were pumped to have me relaunch that once again, because I took kind of some time off with it because I was too busy doing all the millions of other things I do with my life. So that's relaunching hopefully this week.
That's very cool. That sounds like a really interesting thing. If you're out there listening and you had never have, definitely check that out. That kind of leads me into my next point here. Jess, obviously you are a female. Breaking news for anybody listening to the podcast, if you haven't figured that out yet.
I dabble.
You dabble in being a female. That sounds complicated.
Yes.
I can barely wake up and be myself every day. I don't know how I would do 2 things. That sounds complicated. So
I
Jess,
thought you were going to say you can barely wake up and be a man some days.
well, I joke a lot that and hopefully this is not a hot take. I joke a lot that being a straight white male in America, like I am, is pretty much playing life on the easy mode. So no, does not wake up every day, and it is not a struggle. So yeah, that's that. But Jess, you are the second female guest we've ever had on the podcast. So this is obviously
Thank you.
stuff we do. Yeah, well, of course, my pleasure. We talked a little bit about it with Liz, but what has your experience, positive or negative, been being a female in a male dominated industry? You mentioned at the beginning, like you as a kid, you didn't even think that was like a thing. It's obviously much more of a thing now than it was maybe then, but what's kind of let's talk overall from a macro sense about it, and then let's get a little more micro about it.
Well, believe it or not, I think I've received more harassment from women than men on social media. Yeah, I really have. And most of the time they're sneaky about it. At least, some people will tell me straight up through my mentions, well, I think you suck. I think you're stupid. You're not even pretty. You don't know what you're talking about. If I predict that Mike Trout's going to have a great game, but he goes 0-for-4, like, get off my nuts, dude. It's Mike Trout. We weren't obviously Mike Trout last season, not this season. It's not as predictable, but yeah, man's like, I really do not care. So, but yeah,
no, that's a joke from Adam Rank's episode of the podcast. That's how we first became bros. Actually, our relationship started rocky because he was telling me about Mike Trout. And I was like, who the hell is Mike Trout? And I really didn't know. And he was very offended about it because he's an Angels fan, like lifetime. So yeah, he's like, he's only one of the best players in baseball. I'm like, I don't really give a damn about baseball. And long story, if you haven't listened to the Adam Rank episode of the podcast, but continue, Jess. I'm sorry for being rude and interrupting.
Totally fine. Let me continue talking about the America's favorite pastime. Anyhow, but so I totally lost my train of thought, Matt. Gosh.
I'm sorry. You were saying you were talking about people harassing you, and more women.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. So like it was. I feel like it's toned down. I feel like in the last 6 to 7 months. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm more established in the industry and I've kind of been able to prove myself for the most part. But that's what sucks is the fact that I had to prove myself this whole time. And but at the same time, when I first got in the industry, I was never like, oh, I'm a woman, so I'm going to get treated like this, or I'm going to get treated like that. It wasn't until, like I said, I think maybe I landed FanDuel, and I remember I was covering my first college football game for Scout. I was freelancing for Scout, and this girl wrote me the longest, most nasty messages I've ever come across. Did I ever send you that, by the way? I think
I
I
don't think
did.
so. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So she was actually a girl that I knew who I worked with, like through blogging and stuff. And she made it personal. She mentioned like death to my dog. No wonder my boyfriend at the time dumped me and all this other stuff. Yeah. She got real. It got
Oof.
real. Yeah. I know you have a precious little Charlie. So imagine that happening to you. So
Oh no.
it was rough. And that was probably one of like, yeah, it was probably like one of the top 10 things that have like happened to me. I've had a guy that I've turned down for a date write an email to the CEO of FanDuel saying I was an awful writer. I've had a lot of stuff happen. Just some crazy stuff. So, you know, it's one of those things where unfortunately, and I know Liz can probably back me up, any other female in this industry, is we're kind of used to it. We expect it, but that doesn't necessarily mean we should stand for it. So
No,
unfortunately,
absolutely
I
not.
can't go out there and I can't reply to every single piece of crap who writes to me and says, you know, something inappropriate. But at the same time, it's difficult, especially if a girl or a guy is talking crap clearly about me. And I worked really hard to get where I'm at. I know what I look like. Let's be honest. I know I'm a chick. I don't freaking care. I really don't. But at the same time, if I'm going to respect you, I'm going to stay out of your mentions. Stay out of mine, dude. Like, go about your day. I do not care. And if it does get bad, I do have my friends who kind of swoop in, my little anonymous account friends who swoop in and help me save the day. I don't need to be saved, though. I know it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, like with the whole more than mean thing, mean tweets, like, we can do better. Unfortunately, it's not going to stop. And I don't think it's just for women, though. Men get treated like crap. If you want to like really hate your life, look at Skip Bayless's mentions, look at Jason Whitlock's mentions. It's unfortunately what happens when you're in the public eye. I'm not even I'm not even anywhere near where I'm going to be, because I know I'm going to go further in my career. I know it's going to get worse, unfortunately, but it just is what it is. I just feel like people can be better about it. Being a female in this industry, it is what it is. A lot of women have helped me. They've paved the road to help me. And, if I could ever pay them back, I would really, obviously do so. But harassment's going to happen, whether you're a female, you're a male, you're a transgender, whatever, it's going to happen. I just feel like the people on the other side need to kind of take a step back and realize that same thing with fantasy, they're humans. I'm a human, like, obviously. And it's just one of those things where it's going to happen. I don't keep repeating that, but it's very important, because I don't think that it's going to stop. And I hope people don't try to hurt themselves over trying to make it stop, because it's not going to. But you just kind of have to adjust to what's out there in society, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it does suck. You mentioned this idea of like it keeps happening, or it's going to keep happening. Is that really like if a young female writer or someone aspiring was to ask you like, what's the like, how do I deal with that? I'm struggling dealing with it. Is that really kind of the best way to approach it, or how would you like what advice would you give to somebody in that position?
Basically to stay true to yourself. And there's actually one person that I reached out to. It was actually Field Yates, probably 3 months ago, because I know he gets hated on a lot on Twitter. And I reached out to him and I was like, I received this nasty email, and he was like, you just have to be, true to yourself, and you have to. And rather than saying like F the haters, which a lot of people do, he just kind of said, you just kind of have to be true to yourself. And it takes a lot for you to do that. And, I'm a very insecure person, like 90% of the time. When I'm not super confident, I'm really weird. Gosh, I'm a weird person. But when I am my most confident self, it's usually when I just don't care what other people think. I know. So it's one of those things
Charlie's sticking
where
up for you here.
I don't know. If you stay true to yourself and you do what you have to do, you can't have anybody get mad at you, because you're not going to apologize for being who you are, which is easier said than done. but it is what it is. And so he kind of helped me with that because, I was kind of struggling with that. So if I were to tell a female, a young girl, first of all, buckle up because it's a very bumpy ride. And there's going to be many times you're going to doubt yourself. And I still do that on the regular. So it's one of those, scenarios where it's going to happen constantly. But at the same time, don't forget where you came from doing it. And it doesn't always have to be about writing about who you think is going to win the Super Bowl or a batting average or who's going to win this match. You just have to remember you do have a lot of people who go up to bat for you. And if you don't, you should probably rearrange your friends and that aspect. And don't forget who you are. I know you get caught up in social media, but at the end of the day, like, turn the damn Twitter off and figure out what you really want to do. Figure out if it is worth it. Most of the time you're going to think it's not, but you just have to figure out why you decided to start doing it. And at the end of the day, you'll have your answer. It's not easy though. If my daughter were to say, if I did have a daughter and she were to approach me and say, hey, I want to be a sports writer, I'd be like, hell no, you're not. Don't do it. So it's kind of a situation with that, but just keep fighting, keep working hard. Even if you're not getting paid to do it, keep doing it. Do a podcast, get your name out there, get comfortable in front of the camera, which I'm still trying to do. Write everything down, put it in a blog. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you keep working hard and you're nice to people, don't be a dick, you'll actually go far. So
there's your requisite mention of, be nice to people. Seems to come up on every episode of the podcast. It's such a simple thing, be nice to other people, be nice to human beings. And, but it seems to be something that we continually have to remind each other about. You mentioned the one, oh God, now I'm blanking on it. What is it? The mean to mean or something? What was the thing again? I'm
more than mean.
More than mean. Right. Idiot. I'm an idiot. There's a lot going on in my head.
You are, yes.
Yes, I am an idiot. Let's be clear about that. There's the title of the episode. Jessica Kleinschmidt, you're an idiot, Matt. There's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned that video and that campaign. You actually put a response video up to it. If you're listening and you haven't watched it yet, definitely check that out. I think you can find it on Jess's YouTube page. What led you to do that? Because I thought it was a really great response, and I think I shared it from my account too. I thought it was really cool of you to do that. What was the impetus behind that?
Well, it was more or less, at first I was going to go on there and just go ape shit about like, F you, F this, F that. But I was like, no, probably not a good idea. Like I said, my hashtag should be just don't be a dick, because it's not difficult, And so I was thinking, rather than go off on it, they kind of did a great job of showing this is what happened. So I don't have to attack anyone. But I was like, well, I'd rather just have an open forum for women or men who are getting bullied online and say, even if you're a completely anonymous person, that's fine. Because one of my really good friends who I became super close with, she's transgendered. She's a sports writer. And she dealt with a lot of crap, whether it was her friends or family. And her and I became really close after I interviewed her for a story. And I know she dealt with a lot. But every time she deals with something, she reaches out. And I was thinking, wow, I never had that when I first got in the industry. Like I said, a lot of women were mean to me. And I think only up until the last few months, I didn't feel like I had any women that I could reach out to that have gone through the same thing. So then I thought, well, maybe I should do a response and show that not everybody's going to be negative, but at the same time, it's not going to necessarily stop. Good Lord, there I go again. So that's what I did. I did that response. And I tried to show like a good side of me, which is, rare, but I did put it out there. Yeah, of course. I'm such a butthead. So that's why I did that and try to paint some positive light. Obviously, these women, I've never been told the stuff that these women have, besides the whole your dog should die thing. That definitely did happen to me, as I explained earlier. But
awful. Awful. So inexcusable. Bad. Leave the dogs out of this, people.
I'm like, you can wish harm to me, but leave Bella alone. That was my thought process. But so that's why I decided to do that. Plus I wanted to, it was weird. I think I did it like on a whim, and I got really nervous because I was like, I don't like being in front of the camera, but I just did it anyway. And I actually got so much wonderful feedback. And actually, I got 2 really negative comments. And I was like, this dude obviously doesn't understand it. He went off on me saying like, I should just suck it up. And I'm like, I suck it up all the time. I don't know what this guy's saying, you know. And it's, you know, he replied to everybody who commented on my video. So it was just a whole scenario where this guy didn't get it. And actually,
Fella had a lot of time on his hands.
Right, exactly. And Julie DeCaro herself actually reached out and was like, well, he seems nice. I was like, I know, he's just such a precious baby angel. But at the end of the day, like, hashtag love you block button, you know, so that's where that went. And my block button's looking like a 40-man roster these days, probably double that, maybe 3 40-man rosters. So, you know, it is what it is. And I've noticed, you know, I wanted to develop a platform to show these women aren't alone, these men aren't alone. And I wanted people to be open with me, and if they needed help with any sort of suggestions, and that goes to everything, not just being bullied, but like if you ever need, you know, advice on what I'm doing, what have you, or anything else, like I want people to know that there was somebody there for them, because I didn't have that and I really wish I did. But rather than be angry about that, I could reach out and say like, hey, if you need somebody to help you out, like I got you, you know, unless you're a dick and I'm not going to help you. Just saying. Good
life lessons. Jess is good people. So let's kind of, I think really good thoughts on that for sure. But let's go for a little more positive stuff. What's been like a good experience as being a female in this industry that you think like is different from being a man? Like something that's been maybe like an advantage that you have, or like just a different experience that has been really positive?
Probably just interviews I've gotten to do, because men and women do want a woman's perspective in this industry, even, you know, especially with a lot of even though the negative stuff did happen, like with Ray Rice, domestic violence, all kinds of stuff, people do want a female's, you know, perspective. The women and the wives and girlfriends articles that I do, they open up to me because I am a female, and they'll share a lot with me. Brittany Ross, she's a pitcher of Boston Red Sox, she's his wife. You know what I'm saying? She opened up to me about how she had a miscarriage. She was very open with me about what she's dealt with, and a lot of the women are too, and saying like how they get treated. So that's definitely been an advantage. I think just they're more accepting with women now. They love to have like a fun little personality and girl on like a podcast. Not anybody a man couldn't have done like the breakup stuff from FanDuel Insider. That would have been weird. You know, it would have been a little awkward. So having a girl do it makes it more fun. And I can talk about these boys and how you shouldn't be with them, if you will. And, you know, I think that's, you know, something that shows if I can do it, any woman can really do it. So that's probably a good advantage. And I've met a lot of cool women who get where I'm coming from. I've developed amazing friendships, and I don't think I could have developed certain friendships if I was a guy, because, you know, women like to hang out with women sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they're too much, but so are guys. So it's fine. So it is what it is. And I get to not look as weird obsessing over Charlie every time you post a picture of him, because I'm just a girl thing, so it's fine.
Oh, well, I mean, I can never discourage that, but that's a pretty cool perspective that you mentioned, like getting to do the breakup series and stuff like that, and being, you know, yeah, it's something that like, it definitely sounds good from a female voice. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can say, when not that being a woman is a weakness, but some people would perceive it as in this industry. But that's the biggest thing that you can do with anything that you feel like might be viewed as a weakness on the outside, whether it's your like anxiety or any sort of thing like that. If you can take that and turn it into your strength, it's an incredible thing, because it makes you better. It's empowering to you as an individual. I think that, like, from my perspective, I'm a pretty sensitive dude. In case you haven't figured out, the fact that I daily dapped poetry reading on the Fantasy Live podcast, which got a lot of interesting iTunes reviews after that one. Whether it's, you know, me constantly espousing about my feelings on things, whether it's me posting plants. I'm a little bit of a sensitive cat,
You're a sensitive cat. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I try to take that and infuse it into my writing to make it better, to make my voice stronger and be able to empathize with people. And I think that like that's kind of just another example of that from my perspective. Like if you can take something like that that's a perceived weakness and actually make it an asset for yourself, I would encourage you to do that, because like any listeners to do that, because it makes your work better and it makes you feel better as a person too. At least I don't know, Jess, if you agree, but that's my thought.
No, I 100% agree with you, because it's kind of one of those things where if you can be yourself and that's still different, that's a very rare quality to have. You know, not just being a female, but I know I have a very unique personality. I know I can relate to a lot of people. So if you look at it that way as well, you know, especially in this industry, you have to be different. Anybody can just write a blog about why you should start this guy over that guy, or anybody could write, you know, this is why I like the A's or something like that. But if you make it fun, or you put your own little words into it, you catch the right attention up to a totally, you can do amazing things. And same thing with me. If you want to empathize with people, that's such a beautiful characteristic to have. And you're charismatic too. And if you put more of a human perspective behind what you're doing, it definitely helps too. So I 100% agree with you.
Well, that's good. But yeah, absolutely. Like, and I joke about this all the time. Like, if I can do this job, you know, anybody can do this job, because I'm just another idiot. But, you know, why should, but as much as I say that, like, you have to stand out and you have to show people like, yeah, anybody can do it, but this is why I should do it. So, you know, if you're an aspiring writer or person that wants to get into sports media, or for God's sakes, cover baseball, I'm sorry, but, yeah. That's something that you should do. You should realize that anybody can do it, but it's on you to prove like, this is why I'm the person to be able to do it. And that goes for any field, honestly, you know, in all reality. So Jess, you mentioned that you, and you say this a lot to me, and when we talk too, like I'm nowhere near where I'm going to be. What does the future hold for you? Or what would you like it to hold? What's the end game?
Yikes. I don't know. Cause I'm very much like free spirit, live in the moment, try not to over plan stuff, cause it stresses me out. It was actually the first meeting we had with FanDuel Insider. We met all the new writers. Joe Pisapia, who works for Scariest, huge baseball guy, bigger baseball guy than I am. Matt Harmon, you would love him. You would love him.
It's pretty timely that I just muted my microphone to yawn.
I know. I saw that. I was like, really?
Like, that was completely a coincidence.
Totally
no, that was a real thing. I was actually yawning at the same time as you were telling that.
Okay.
Oh, we're so on the same wavelength right now.
We really are.
This is peak podcasting.
So he mentioned that he wanted to be a sports entertainer, and I really loved that definition. And the reason why I liked it is because it shows you're diverse, and I feel in my writing I'm diverse. I can write a very serious piece, or I can make something, you know, facetious, have fun with it, what have you. And I really am getting into my radio spots, and I'm trying to start my own podcast. I just don't really have time. And obviously trying to be more diverse with getting on camera. So I don't really 100% know. What I do know is I enjoy what I do right now. I love the writing aspect. I love all the media stuff I've been doing, and so on and so forth. My dream job would be a correspondent with like MLB Network or Fox Sports doing baseball. And I'm okay with that, because I know there's so much competition in football with women and everyone really. And I know you bash on baseball, but that's okay. I love baseball. I don't give a shit if you don't. But at the same time, nor should I. And it's cool because, you know, people are saying that baseball is a dying sport, and obviously it's, you know, you can call it what it is, but I don't think there's a lot of people like me in baseball as far as personalities go or analysts go and what have you. So it's definitely something that I'm shooting for. I don't think I've never met anybody like me who can do what I do necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying like my job is difficult. We've always talked about, you know, that, but I think I bring a fun perspective. I think I bring a unique perspective, and, you know, I just like to have fun with stuff. And it's difficult to find somebody who's both very, very fun and very, very serious. You can take seriously. And I'm hoping people look at me that way. Obviously it is because I have 5 to 10 radio spots I do a week. So obviously something's working for me. So like I said, dream job, probably something with MLB Network. Yeah. Totally making it rain. Sports journalism, tell you what. Yeah, I'm going to go buy bottles of Cristal. I'm sitting on a big pile of money right now. I tell you what. You really have to love what you do to love this, to work in this industry for sure. But so that's probably a dream job. I've always wanted to be like a beat writer for a certain baseball team. Those are kind of difficult jobs to come by because I love traveling. I get really annoyed if I stay in one spot for more than like 6 weeks. Especially the place that I live. I love traveling, so that'd be cool. So what's better than writing and about baseball and traveling? Don't answer that question. So it's just kind of one of those scenarios. But those are probably my dream jobs, to be honest. But we'll see what the future holds. I'm pretty excited to see what happens. We'll see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of those. I mean, if baseball aside, that would be some pretty kick-ass jobs there for sure.
Baseball aside.
Baseball aside. But anyways,
minus the fact that it's
minus the fact that you want to work in baseball. Like, other than that, it sounds pretty sick. I really did not want this episode to be as anti-baseball as it is. Like, I was
excited because you have a diverse group. Now you have like the baseball listeners who could actually listen, and now all you're doing is shitting on baseball. Like,
I'm alienating the audience. Oh no, that's something I never wanted to do. Just a few more questions for you here, Jess, before we get out of here. You mentioned, kind of transitioning from writing to being on the radio and then being in front of the camera. As somebody that's struggled with that at different points in my career, it's always weird to say career, but especially now I feel I can talk on podcasts all day. If you've been following me this offseason, I've been on about 3,000, but the on-camera stuff is still a little weird for me. But what is that transition like? What are the different skill sets that you need to develop in order to kind of move on through that progression?
Well, it's a confidence thing, I've noticed. And first of all, you have a great face for radio, so I don't know why it was so difficult for you to start off.
This episode is over.
Shit on baseball more, Matt, and then more will come to you. Just saying.
Oh God. I always joke that it's like a rule. I always joke that it's a rule on the podcast that you have to, like, every guest has to compliment me at least once, and you've actually taken the opposite, and you've taken a shot right at my heart. Ouch.
Well, I'm just saying, for the record, if you're you should know how to talk to a lady. Don't bash on baseball. That's rule number 1, to talk to a lady.
That was never in that was never in the rule book. I think it was don't bring up baseball.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Well, Jess, you are a unicorn, so that's what it is.
I am definitely a unicorn, that's for sure. But yeah, so it's definitely a confidence thing, and I've noticed that's with everything. And you have to believe in like what you're saying. You have to believe in your own skills. But being on camera, the most awkward thing that I've gotten is talking to the camera. Like just this, there's this thing you have to talk to, and you're like, you're not a person, and it doesn't respond back. So if you make a funny joke, which I make tons of them, hello, and nobody laughs at you, you're like, oh crap, was that even funny? So it's like, oh my gosh, it's all awkward. And then, but luckily, like, even with my last video, I've gotten a lot of responses from people in the industry where they were saying, like, you can tell you were talking from your heart, but you're not always going to be talking from your heart. You have to read what's on the teleprompter. And I've seen Anchorman. I could really F that up. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I get nervous about. I'm nervous I'm going to say something stupid or just look dumb or not know what to do with my hands. You just got to train yourself. It's a lot of, like, looking at yourself in the mirror, realizing what you do, realizing your quirks. I do a lot of teleprompter practice stuff. A lot of people, that's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I was told I should do that. So I've been doing that. When somebody from Fox Sports tells you to practice on the teleprompter, you practice on the damn teleprompter, just saying. So that's what I've been doing. So like I said, it's definitely a confidence thing, and it's all about, in this industry and yourself, you got to kind of break your boundaries. I feel like I dominated writing. So I was like, okay, what's the next step? Okay, cool, a podcast. I did that. And then live radio spots. That was kind of nerve-wracking the first couple times too. And then after now I feel like I've done those well enough, and now I have to figure out the video stuff, which slowly but surely getting into. So as long as you just think, if you're 100% confident in what you have to say, 100% confident in how you feel, you're perceived at, or even if you don't care what other people think, just be yourself. Just realize, it's part of the job. It's what you have to do. Just be confident, do your thing.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Absolutely. And you're one of the people that I saw doing these first, you and like Josh Norris, I saw doing like the Periscope things. And those have actually been really helpful to me, in my opinion. So I would encourage, like, if you are somebody that wants to get into the video side of things, if you're in school for that or for video broadcasting, whatever, like, just do those little Periscope sessions. Like, even if nobody's watching, who cares? It's not important. But like, just get used to like talking, to the phone, to the little camera, and like thinking on your feet. Like, because I had I've done a couple of them, and it's weird, like, to have to think, like, somebody asks you a question, like, boom, like, okay, do you like Deion Lewis or Eddie Lacy better? Boom, get my answer. Like, and you got to think on your feet, and you also have to say, you can't babble on forever too, because there's a lot of questions coming at you quickly.
They come in hot.
At least for me, because I'm pretty popular.
Right. Anywho, so the thing about, but I've noticed with the with Periscope, if you can even turn off the chat function, and they made me do that a lot on FanDuel because people are buttheads most of the time.
No, I gotta talk to my people.
You gotta talk to your people.
That's what I'm there for.
But mine was on the FanDuel Periscope, and it was just me giving last minute plays, and they told me not to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about Periscope is like you have to think so fast, and like if you're in the middle of a thought process and somebody asks you a question, you're scared that you're gonna forget it, so you hurry up and answer it, but you can't go back to your original thing. I'm very spacey sometimes, so that kind of happens a lot. But I do agree, it does give you it gives you a perspective. It's just basically like it's like one big selfie, like a live selfie that you're answering questions with. So like I said, I do suggest Periscope. Like you said, I think it's a really good resource. We use that a lot with FanDuel during the football season. It actually worked out beautifully, and everybody really liked it. So I suggest it too.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, hey, one long selfie, two beautiful people like us. What's wrong with that? I compliment myself. All right, let's get out of here. No, but seriously, Jess, I really want to thank you for your time tonight. This has really been fantastic. I think you gave a lot of great perspectives. I always give the guest one last shot at the floor here before I yank it out from under you before we get out of here. So any parting shots to the audience, whether it's advice to aspiring writers or just thoughts in general, the floor is yours.
I was nervous you were going to ask me that. It's like kind of like when like the teacher's like, oh, you can talk amongst yourselves, and that it like feels weird, so you like don't want to talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Because it's like, okay, but then if you were to tell me to be quiet, I would just go off. But I guess like I said, don't be intimidated by this industry. Not just females. I don't want to just say that with females, but a lot of young writers constantly fill up my email box with, how do I get started? The easiest way to say it is just do it. Just anything that you feel that you want out on paper, get it done. It doesn't even have to be sports. I also have like a lifestyle blog that I'm starting too, so you can do that with the best relationship advice in the world. Not really, just kind of all the mistakes I've made in life that I write about. So I have that too. So it's really good therapy too. I've noticed if you really want to keep a journal, do that. If you want to share it with the public, cool. If you don't, that's fine too. You're not going to get paid for everything. You have to remember that. Just keep doing what you want to do. And that's, your best work is sometimes stuff you don't get paid for. Some of the best pieces I've ever written were stuff I didn't get a penny for. And, like I said, don't be intimidated by this industry. Don't be intimidated by anything you do. If you're comfortable with yourself, you can honestly do anything that you want. And that's super important too, because the scariest person you have to deal with at the end of the day is yourself. And if you're not comfortable with yourself, your life will be shattered. So I strongly suggest that. And, big shout out to you. I think these are great podcasts that you've been doing. And thank you for having me and all that fun stuff. Yeah. Jessica out.
Beautiful. There you go.
Did I do that right?
I think so. Your audio probably cut out a little bit, but hey, if it happened, I think we all got your.
You have to drop your mic at the end of this. You have
This might cost money. I'm not dropping this thing. Are you kidding? I'm not the president of the United States or Kobe Bryant. I cannot just be dropping mics left and right. NFL
You're not
media.
Kobe Bryant?
No.
You're not.
I'm
Kobe
better.
Bryant?
I'm better than.
Wow.
Hot take. All right. On that note. Thank you again. Thanks again to Jess. I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, no, that is right. It's just a fact. No, but seriously. I really want to thank Jess for coming on today. If you guys are not familiar with her work, please check it out. I think she does a very good job at FanDuel, and just a great voice in general, regardless of what the content is. And if you're listening, of course, thank you guys for tuning in again. If you could, even though we're not giving a spot away at the Scott Fish Bowl, it always helps if you guys can share the show, leave a rating or review on iTunes. It helps a lot. The feedback is always tremendous, and I look forward to doing more of these. If you're listening to the show, I'm probably on the road by now, driving across country. So keep Charlie and I in your thoughts. Hopefully we don't run into any bears along the way. We are prepared. We have a tent and everything. We're sleeping outside most of the way, so it is going to be quite a journey. But you guys are right there. You're right there along with us in spirit. But anyways, I want to thank you guys so much for listening today, and I hope you learned something.